Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Flashback 64, the chronological Nintendo 64 podcast, part of the SoundStone.network. I thought I'd try to say that here in the front. I'm Gooey, and I'm with McKenna, as always. Hey, McKenna.
Hello.
And it's storming outside, and it's super hot inside. So there are many potential audio hazards that could interfere with this episode. So, but I think our kind listeners will be gracious towards us. So, thank you. Anyway, we're here. We're wrapping up. We're doing more of our series of like just summing up 1997, and I thought it would be fun to talk about professional wrestling because it's come up a few times on the show. And a lot of people we know love it. And McKenna, I think we've established this. You're not a fan, really. Though we watch together now and we've gone to some events, but...
Yeah. There's some people I like. There's some wrestlers.
Yeah, mostly in the year 2025, obviously. But it's interesting.
Who are some of your wrestlers now? Sorry to interrupt. I'm just very curious. McKenna, who are some of your wrestlers now?
We're joined by returning guests Vic and Andy. No, it's okay. Some of my podcasts.
I completely forgot about the format.
Come on, you've been out of the game so long, Vic. I get it.
Jeez.
Well, here we're also joined by two of my podcasting brothers, Vic. Hey, Vic, and Andy's.
Hey, Goo.
And Andy Spiteri. What's up, Andy?
What's up? Vic, it's been a while, man, since we did a podcast together. Like,
it has been a very long time.
I want to say like 2018, like the John Moxley movie, I think was the last thing that we did.
I got Discord specifically for the podcast, and it said I created my Discord in 2018. So yeah, that would be about that time. Yeah,
that lines up.
Yes, we cover it on our. Actually, you can't really find it anymore, though. I did figure out how to log in just the other day. Because I was curious, I was like, we've covered some stuff from 97 on our old wrestling podcast. But yeah, the last time we were, the three of us were together was to talk about the WWE Studios movie 12 Rounds 3 Lockdown, starring then Dean Ambrose. Now, John.
Have they made any more 12 rounds since then, I wonder?
Is it like the Marine where there's like 7 of them or whatever?
Yeah. I have to look at this now.
I mean, after we did that, obviously Moxley's career just skyrocketed to the stars. So I think we might be able to take some credit for that. But anyway, sorry. I just wanted to get you guys in because Vic, as you do, you like to probe us.
I jumped the gun here a little.
No, I remember when we had you on our Simpsons episode, you also probed us pretty well, which I appreciate. It makes my job easier, honestly.
So and I'm glad, Andy, it's great to see you. And I'm glad that you're here as well, because you also bring the Canadian perspective, which I feel like is very valuable. I think I saw Tim Hortons cup in your hands.
He's loyal, yeah.
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 And so I have questions for everybody. But so first, just to set the foundation, McKenna,
we're gonna recreate 97.
Vic is a sexy boy.
As a 2025 wrestling fan, McKenna, who are some of your people? I've been running. I've been lifting some weights.
Good, yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Willow Nightingale, Julia Hart.
Great choice.
Yep. You love the hat, Julia's hat.
I love the hat.
You want,
the whole vibe.
You want a hat.
I do want a hat. I found the person that makes the hat on Instagram. So
you should totally like cosplay as Julia Hart for like go for Halloween or something.
That would be awesome.
Yeah,
Goo, you could be the Beast Mortis.
To make you that hat?
I could go Brody King.
That person makes hats. They do like hat collections, and then I think they have a limited number of sort of more customized commissions.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
Who are some other favorites?
The whole Tony Storm thing going on right now is
love Tony
awesome.
Storm.
Yeah.
She was probably one of the first when we started watching first wrestlers who I was like, I like her.
Yeah, and we were like, I feel like at first we were like, what's she doing? This is weird. I remember thinking that, like, what is this bit she's doing? when she was like first having like the sort of breakdown, and then like a month or two in, it was like, oh, she's like locked in. Like, I get it now. It's amazing. And so that was cool to.
I didn't love her before she became timeless. Actually, I thought she was like, she's a good wrestler, but like, yeah, this unlocked Toni Storm for me.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Those are our favorites. I feel like there's other people we get excited about, but I can't think of.
Jamie Hayter came back recently.
Mm-hmm.
I like the whole Hangman Swerve Osprey thing going on right now.
Those are the stars for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
John Moxley. We gotta get. No, we don't need to talk about that
right now. He'll always be Dean Ambrose from 12 Rounds 3 Lockdown to me.
Remember in the movie where he has to he shoots like a dead guy who's got like a gun, and I'm pretty sure, doesn't he shoot him with a taser to like make? Am I imagining this? He shoots a guy with a taser who's like dead, and it makes him like convulse and pull the trigger. I'm pretty sure that happens, but anyway,
I trust you.
What were we talking about?
I'm sorry.
This is not 19. Sorry,
McKenna. You talked about John Moxley like he like backed into your car. Did something happen? Did you like fall out of favor with old John?
I don't think you've ever been a Moxley fan, really.
Yeah, I've never been a big Moxley fan, I'd say.
And then like,
now I'm just like, okay, I'm kind of tired of this Death Riders thing.
I was pretty down on it, and I think it's starting to pay off. Actually, it's starting to pay dividends
now because it's like at the end. But man, it was the shits for the first while. I'm with you, McKenna. Like I've been complaining to Goo for years about John Moxley,
even before the Death Riders thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not a huge John Moxley fan. I was just genuinely curious. Like, you just like, we don't talk about John Moxley here in this house. Like, John Moxley is whatever. You just sounded so like, ominous about it.
No, we can tolerate John Moxley for sure. So that's wrestling in 2025, but we're rewinding the clock back to maybe a less. Well, I mean, we're starting a boom period in wrestling, but Vic, as you were saying before we started recording, maybe an interesting period to go back and watch for sure. And this kind of connects, I guess. We got into talking about it really with we covered WCW versus NWO World Tour that came out at the end of 1997. And I guess okay, so we know everyone here is like a wrestling fan, but I guess specifically like at this time, Vic, if you want to go first. Were you watching wrestling, and were you playing like wrestling games? Like, what were you up to in 1997?
Could not stop me from watching wrestling in 1997. Like every Monday, we would put on WCW Nitro for the first hour, right? And then from 8 to 9, you're switching back and forth between Raw and Nitro. And then, you watch the last hour of Raw. And I can remember, like, specifically, I loved wrestling so much. I was also in Cub Scouts, and once a month we would have, like, a Cub Scout meeting on Monday, and I would legitimately throw a temper tantrum because I wanted to stay home and watch wrestling so badly. And so I feel like this era of wrestling maybe wasn't made for 9 and 10-year-olds, because in 1997 I was 9? Yeah, 9. And maybe it wasn't made for me, but I feel like a lot of specifically young boys between the ages of like 9 and 14 like had to have loved wrestling at this time.
That's basically like the peak years of wrestling for me. Yeah. Like 14, I think of it as the time of being like, okay, I need to start being a grown up. You know what I mean? I'm a teenager now. I don't like that stuff that kids like, you know?
Yeah, 13, 14, I was like, I'm going to play drums in a band now. I don't care. Yep. Like, I like skateboarding. Wrestling is boring. And now here I am, 37. I spend a lot of my time thinking about and talking about wrestling again.
Vic, when's your birthday?
January 16th.
Oh, I'm 37 too. We're basically the same age. I'm October.
Hey, perfect. Yeah, I'm assuming we had a lot of similar lived experiences. I can tell you all that I like begged my mom for a D-Generation X shirt And I feel like this is the most 1997 story because we were at Kmart's. And for some reason, Kmart carried WWF shirts. But the DX shirt, like the classic, like block logo DX shirts that says, "I've got 2 words for you, suck it" on the back, right? Which also, like, what a weird thing that they felt the need to asterisk out the U as if we couldn't figure out what this word was. Like, that's a whole nother story.
Socket?
But for whatever reason, Kmart had the DX shirt without the back. And the only way my mom would let me get the DX shirt is if it didn't have the "suck it" on the back. And I wore the hell out of that shirt. I loved that shirt so much.
I definitely know that feel. That was like a maybe part of the appeal of wrestling at that age was you could be like, suck it, or, you know, you'd listen to, I remember just, I associate this wrestling for obvious reasons, but I had, you know, the Devil Without a Cause Kid Rock CD, and I had the CD had the middle finger with the thumb out on the CD, you know, so like wrestling and that whole thing gave you permission as like a preteen to be like, yes, you suck, fuck you, you know. So Andy, how about you? Well, hold on. Let's Andy, what 97?
I was like a peripheral wrestling fan for most of 97. Ironically, it was Survivor Series that really got me interested into wrestling, and that's when I started like actually like watching every single week. I like knew like who the top guys were, like, of course, and I would like sometimes watch Raw, sometimes watch Nitro, but I can't say I was like a massive fan like during 97, but as I became like a really big wrestling fan, like that was the time, like, some of my favorite things to do was like go to Blockbuster and rent pay-per-views. Like, so I would rent
you could do
Canadian
that?
Stampede, or I'd rent WrestleMania. Yeah, man.
Wow.
I watched basically every WrestleMania. I'd rent it from Blockbuster. I watched it. Most of the pay-per-views, like, I got. There's very little that I didn't like watch, and especially from 97. And as I got older, I was just like, 97 is just like such an interesting year. Like, specifically 97.
Yes.
Is such an interesting year because it's like the bridge, and it's kind of the best of both worlds between like the, you know, at the time, like the class, like the new generation and what was coming next. So it was a very interesting year. Like, all my favorite kind of stars were still like rocking. I will say another thing that like really kind of upped my wrestling fandom, not only Survivor Series, but like Starrcade that year as well, because that just felt like the biggest thing in the entire world. So like I remember like getting, I think it was like PWI magazine or something like that, and they were like the match of the century on there, and I was like, damn, like, yeah, this is like, I can't miss this. And I also had a friend, or I should rephrase, my uncle had a friend, and he would invite me over to start watching like pay-per-views. He'd always have a bunch of people over, so I got to actually like watch some of these in like real time, and I thought it was so cool. I was like, it's like 10 or 11, and I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna watch Stone Cold or whatever, which
so
is
for
jumping
you,
ahead a little bit.
it was like, oh, you're like, I'm hanging out with the grown-ups, so you got to feel more mature.
Kinda,
yeah.
So like during 97 itself, like I can't say for the most of it I was like really dialed into what was going on, but I certainly, in retrospect, after, like, it might be one of my favorite times in wrestling, like, ever.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I was like 7, and I think it's more like I think 9, like this. I remember this stuff, so I feel like this is like the beginning of when I was like getting into it. Okay, Vic, sorry. What was your question?
This is such a pressing question that needs to be asked, but you were talking about like little kids telling adults or other little kids to suck it, and I was just very curious. For McKenna specifically, as someone who didn't watch wrestling, were you seeing kids do that? Have you ever told someone to suck it?
Well,
like, is that like ever like a?
This is a good question, more from an 8, because I think McKenna's more from like the ruthless aggression era. You know what I mean?
How old are you in 97, McKenna?
2.
Okay, so maybe at 2 you were not telling anyone to suck it.
I don't know. I think I was like making animal noises, probably.
Maybe your parents had like the soother. They were like, "Come on."
She was growing up more like in the era of, you know, word life, thugonomics. You know,
Sure.
people at your school like doing John Cena raps or anything like that?
Not that I can remember.
Yeah. I mean, what did you think of it growing up? And I mean, probably even too, because I remember like Andy, I don't know if you might not have been at this one, but there was like definitely a marathon where people were like relentlessly showing McKenna wrestling clips to be like, look how cool.
That was 2020.
It was 2020. Okay. So you weren't there, but it was like to like, and I'm like, did not want to, like when we started dating.
They showed me one thing.
It was the Ric Flair promo.
It showed you, Jay Lethal. I can already.
But I was like, this is not going to convince anyone to like wrestling. Like you're just. Anyways, yeah. What was your impression of it growing up? Like, I assume just like as corny and dumb because it is.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really think much about it.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody who watched it really. I get my mom's cousin's family watches wrestling.
Yeah.
But
your whole family is like real sports oriented.
Yeah.
Like you're a very athletic family.
We always had like soccer or something on TV.
Yeah. So, you know, it's probably more goofy comparatively. That like, why would, yeah. Anyway.
Hello, we are Kirby Conversations, a podcast on Kirby, along with other adjacent subjects like Smash Brothers, HAL Laboratory, and other related Nintendo games.
In each episode, we take an in-depth, well-researched look at a Kirby topic, drawing on our decades of experience playing Kirby games, creating Kirby-related content, and working in and around the video game industry. I'm Sean Douglas. I'm a theater and video game journalist.
And my name's Bridget. I'm an online Kirby commentator and collector.
Our team also includes photographer and Nintendo ambassador Kai, Captain Dangerous Parker, and Gigi, the editor-in-chief of Wick Kirby. Join us for deep dives into Kirby's history, interviews with industry professionals, and even inside looks at Nintendo, as together we explore all things Kirby and HAL Laboratory. You can find Kirby Conversations on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
I thought we could hit upon some of the bigger stuff, but I thought before we, you know, this is the era you mentioned to Andy. It's like the start of like the Monday Night Wars had been going on. It's like the right at the beginning of like the Attitude Era, as people call it. But I thought before we do that, maybe we could mention maybe a little tidbits of other things. We're going to stick to that perspective mainly because that's like what we know. But I know like Vic, you're like deep into, actually, do you want to plug one of your side gigs right now? This is the perfect opportunity.
Ooh. So in the last few years, so Goo had mentioned that we had a wrestling podcast for many years. Andy was a guest at one point. And that led me down this weird rabbit hole of more pretentious Japanese wrestling. And I had made some notes about what was happening in 1997 in like New Japan and All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling, because there was like a weird contrast there. But at this point in my life, that's like the stuff that really is like interesting to me, like mid-90s Japanese wrestling. And I do, if you're interested in Japanese wrestling action figures from the 90s, I got a store, vixfigs.com, www.vicsfigs.com.
Check it out. It's cool.
I'm an importer-exporter of Japanese wrestling figures. So just like, Andy, I don't know, I mean, were you ever into like, the action figures, like, or Goo? Did either of you, like, were you in it that deep where you had like the bone-crunching action or like the Hasbro's?
Yeah, I had the the regular WWF action figures or whatever. So I actually had like my toys when I was growing up. I made a wrestling league with all my toys, and like some of my toys had actual wrestler names, some of them didn't. So like I had for example, I had a Venom, like Spider-Man Venom toy or whatever, like or Spidey in the black suit, and I was like, hey, you're the Undertaker, and Carnage, you're Kane. But I had like some Jurassic Park dudes, and I was like, you could just stay as you are, and like some Batman. I had like I made little title belts out of like styrofoam paper, like, or styrofoam plates or whatever. And I was like, okay, made some twist ties on there. I was like, this is the championship belt we're all fighting for. I'd book WrestleManias. I was into it, man.
I definitely like made my, you know, all my toys fight and stuff, but I don't think I went that far, but I had, you know, on top of whatever your Power Rangers, Ninja Turtles stuff, I remember having like a DDP action figure. I might have had some others, but
was it the one that did the DDP, like that had the motion where it would make the diamond cutter hand sign?
I think it might have had something on it. You could press it and you do the bang, you know. Very.
Yep.
Oh, it was the legs. That's right. I think there was a bunch of wrestlers, right, where you squeeze the legs and they like punch or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your arms would go up or whatever.
And also, not 97, but well, in 97, I remember my next door neighbors. I don't know why they had this because it was like maybe they were into wrestling, but it was like this really old couple. They were older than my grandparents even at the time. And I remember I would go over there and just like play sometimes, it's like, oh, the little kid from next door, come over, pet our cat and play with our toys. And they had a whole mess of those like late 80s, just like pure rubber, like dudes.
LJN.
Was it LJN?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Here, Vic's Figs. We got the expert. So I definitely
literally looking at Vic's Figs right now.
It's a good site. I gotta say, it looks good.
Yeah. So I shout out to my wife for doing all the graphic design on it.
Oh, it looks great. I mean, so I remember going over and like just smashing those together as well. Like I remember, and it became kind of the mental image in my mind of like, it's the first time I kind of made the connection of like a different generation of wrestling. You know what I mean? Because the toys felt, as a kid, they felt like, oh, that's like old toys or something, So when I started to see Hulk Hogan, and I remember they had Lex Luger, like those immediately became wrestlers I thought of as like old guys. Even though, like I was a kid. What it
was for me, like any wrestler that was in like a Super Nintendo wrestling game, I was just like, those must be the old guys and not the N64. Like, because like I had like a couple and like the games were horrible. There's only like 8 wrestlers to choose from. Like it wasn't great. Maybe I shouldn't say that. If I revisited it, maybe I'd feel differently. But that's how I like distinguish like the old gen from like the new guys.
That's fair. There's some people who could get away, like, because I think like we'll talk about him, but like Sting, he went through like a radical transformation, so he never caught that stigma for me. Like I'd look at the old Sting figure and it was like, this isn't even like the same guy. I'm sorry, Vic, what I cut you off there.
So I was just gonna say it's so funny, Andy, that you mentioned like incorporating the other toys and making the belts. In the toy biz, they referred to that as a fig fed, like an action figure wrestling federation. So you had a fig fed, and this is like a very like common thing.
I hadn't heard of that.
Lots of people who collect specifically wrestling toys talk about being a kid and having a fig fed, and like, okay, they like, you do the booking, and okay, my I don't know, whatever, my Jurassic Park T-Rex is going to be the champion now. He's going to have the belts. Did
you ever
and so you like this,
do you ever make your toys fight, McKenna?
He's gone.
I don't think so.
Do you have any memorable dolls or action figures or anything?
Well, I had like various dolls growing up. I had like the typical like Barbie. I had American Girl. I definitely did not fight with the American Girl doll.
No, you didn't ever do Lex Luger versus.
I had Polly Pop. I did have some like Star Wars figures, but
oh, okay.
I don't.
Oh, that would have been good for a fig fed.
Oh yeah. I didn't know
the Jeff Goldblum versus the Power of the Force Luke Skywalker for the main event.
Let's go faster. So I didn't know about fig feds. I knew that there's like, there's people who do like the virtual, like the video game feds and stuff like that. Like people who do like make content or whatever out of that. I'm sure there's people who probably do that for figurines, right? Like online.
Oh yeah. There's like whole podcasts where people do like audio, like fig fed, and here's my, and they take, it's like fig photography where they're taking pictures.
You do
of
like
the action
ASMR
figures in the ring.
That, I feel like too.
Yes.
Okay.
That's cool.
There's a whole culture around that.
Well, speaking of like sicko stuff then, Vic, that's what I wanted to ask you. Cause like, I don't know. I guess maybe like it's kind of dismissive to call like maybe all Japan stuff the sicko stuff, but that it's what an American audience would be unfamiliar stuff. But that 97 was like a big time for that, right? Was that in the era of like the King's Road, the 4 pillar stuff, or what was going on? What was going on in Japan, Vic, as our like correspondent for that?
So I ask, I'm glad, McKenna, you mentioned like some of the current like women's wrestlers, because I feel like WWF in 1997 is doing an incredibly terrible job of portraying any woman on camera. But across the way in Japan, there are like tons of incredible female wrestlers. Aja Kong, Manami Toyota, Megumi Kudo. There's all these like women, like these female athletes that are absolutely crushing it. And so then, yeah, you do have the King's Road. So All Japan Wrestling in the late 90s, you have Masawa, you have Kenta Kobashi, you have Toshiaki Kawada, you have Akira Taue, that are like these, they look like old men. Like they're just like, they're not like, they're big. They're definitely bigger than us. But they're not like super jacked. They're not Hulk Hogan. But they're absolutely just like dropping each other on their heads and just like really like hitting the shit out of each other, which I personally really love. I like watching these old Japanese dads.
You probably seen like Eddie Kingston references those guys all the time. That's like one of his major influences, right? So I think even his gear is kind of right. Wow. Yeah.
His gear is inspired by Toshiaki Kawada, my favorite personal All Japan pillar. He wears the yellow and black Dangerous K. But then at the same time, there's New Japan, and New Japan has like a really crazy like juniors. So like the smaller high flyers. So like the people who inspired Will Ospreay, or like, you know, someone who's currently doing a lot of like really crazy flippy stuff. You know, Speedball, Mike Bailey, right? A lot of those people are inspired by what's happening in New Japan in the like mid to late 90s. So they have this thing called the Super J Cup, which is this tournament. And they have the J Crown. There's a lot of like pomp and circumstance. We did.
It might have been like
time on our podcast.
Something, one of those years we might have covered.
We covered the second stage. So yeah. You do. And so yeah, there's all these like masked like hybrid lucha libre wrestlers wrestling in Japan. They're doing all this absolutely crazy stuff and diving off of things and flipping off of things, and it's excellent. It's really, really, really good. It's treated more like a sport, like WWF and WCW in like 1997. It's like turning into that, and we'll probably talk about this. It's turning into like the soap opera type stuff. Not that it wasn't always that way, but Japan is treating this like whatever McKenna's family is watching in 1997, like football. I don't know. Do you watch rugby? I don't know what you all were watching, but real sports. Japan treats it like a real sport amongst real athletes.
You start to get like bits and pieces of that sort of stuff on. I think you'd see it more too on Nitro, on WCW Nitro. Like they'd reference the Super Juniors, and they'd have like the luchadors and stuff like that. But it was sort of like, it was never fully treated, I think, like the same as the other stuff, you know, in a way that like they tend to treat it more now. They, you know, with like your Forbidden Doors and your stuff like that, you know, like they give it a little bit more respect. Whereas like they'd still find a way, if it was on WWF, you know, like Jerry Lawler would just be dumping all over the match the entire time, or maybe Bobby the Brain Heenan a little bit. I mean, kind of healing it up, but at times when you're watching those style matches and they're doing it constantly, it does get a little bit like, okay, why should I take this seriously if you think this sucks, you know?
Which is fair. It is like, I don't know how much 1997 y'all watched leading up to this. We put on a couple of things, and I always kind of forget just like how racist and like misogynistic, like when they bring in Japanese wrestlers, like it's terrible. Like I can't believe, and everyone in 1997 was just like, haha, yeah, cool. Like it's horrible.
That shined in in the World Tour episode. We were talking about how they had some of those wrestlers from Japan or Mexico or whatever, but they had to give them like fake names, but they would name them like Kimchi or something, you know, stuff like that. And you were talking about the like the women's wrestling as well, and you know, you're definitely right. Like the way they treated them was terrible, but in 97 they almost don't get featured really at all. Like, I mean, you haven't watched stuff, well, especially not on Nitro. We watch more Nitro because, well, anyway, we watch more Nitro, but you really just get the Nitro girls and maybe Miss Elizabeth and Kimberly, but like there's no women's wrestling like at all. And then at this time in WWF, you had like Sunny and
Sunny and Sable,
but it's also like, it's bad, but it's only gonna get worse. You know what I mean? Like that's why it's like right now.
I don't think they were wrestling at all in '97.
No.
Like any of the women in WWF.
No. So they're gonna wrestle soon, but it's like it's almost like I don't know if I want this either. What they're doing with them, you know, they it's some pretty bad stuff.
You start wrestling, but then there's like the Jello or the pillow fight or the like. I think they actually get in the ring. You're absolutely right. Like WCW does not portray women at all, other than the Nitro Girls
and like girlfriends.
WWF does have, yes, correct, or valets, or WWF does have women in the ring, but they're treated like a modicum better than the women in WCW, who are not like presented at all.
I don't know if they're better because it's like in WCW. Actually, I don't even want to compare these, but I will just say in WCW, it's like, look at the Nitro Girls. They're dancing. They're beautiful. And it's like kind of like people dancing is not so bad. But then
they're like cheerleaders, and cheerleaders is a great like it's a skill to do.
I think we should bring it back, but there should be the like dynamite dudes. You know what I mean? Like, or like a mixed gender. Like, we need people dancing. I like seeing that.
I'd be down for that.
He's right.
But you turn out
cheerleaders like the Lakers or the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. That was like a very like, hey, this is a little sexy, but it is still like there's some skill there.
I think it's a step above like what those matches in WWF were to be. I feel like I would be less if I was like showing my grandfather who hated wrestling like a snippet. I'd way rather show him the Nitro Girls than like Sable versus Luna Vachon or something or whatever.
Even then, like before they were really wrestling over there, it would be like Sonny or whoever comes out and cuts a promo. Then they have to go do commentary with Jerry the King Lawler and Vince McMahon, which is horrible to listen to. It's so horrible. But I don't know what else to say about it other than it's bad.
Extreme Championship.
Well, we were talking about some of the Japanese stuff and like how it kind of penetrated here. You did get a little bit of that too in ECW, which had that sort of stuff, which I didn't really watch a lot of at the time, but 1997 was kind of like a banner year for them because they did have their first pay-per-view, which was Barely Legal. And I actually don't remember. I don't remember what the main event was, but we did watch a little bit of Taz versus Sabu because that sounded like the best match to me. And we both like Taz.
Yeah,
we love Taz just from his current work. He's great, but
who doesn't love Taz? Who doesn't love Taz?
And I guess, you know, R.I.P. Sabu, he passed away recently, and we saw Taz spoke about it on TV, and he was like almost in tears. It was very moving, actually, seeing Taz about to cry, you know.
Very, very tough one. Amanda and I were actually at Sabu's last match in Las Vegas a few weeks ago.
Whoa.
And it was insane. It was like a genuine like car crash of a live event. I don't know if any of you watched it or like saw clips of it.
No.
I saw like a clip, but I haven't watched the whole thing.
What was the deal?
It's like, well, so the story has since come out that like Sabu was saying no, that he did not want to wrestle. And so to your point, like this man has been wrestling for 30 years as of 2025 before he passed away. And so I guess he had some anxiety or he was hesitant because he maybe had some injuries. And so somebody gave him some kratom. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the legal substance kratom. I'm personally not familiar with it on a personal level. They gave him some kratom and he goes out to the ring and he's obviously like very like hesitant to do anything.
Yeah.
And then he proceeds to just like get absolutely destroyed. It's a no rope barbed wire match, which is very ECW-esque. And he gets an Irish whip into the barbed wire and he hits it and the barbed wire just completely gives way and he just falls to the ground in a heap. And Amanda, my wife, was just like, I think maybe we need to leave. I think that this is like bordering on like too much. This is bordering on like
beyond
uncomfortable
sicko stuff.
But we stayed and watched. Yes, beyond sicko. So that match, I don't believe had any lasting contribution to his passing, but I also don't know.
That sounds horrible. Yeah, that sounds horrible to watch. I mean, that's kind of like, some of the reputation ECW has is that style of match, but also, I mean, Vic, from covering it on our show, like they also just had like legit cool wrestling on there. They kind of get remembered just for the one thing, but did any of you watch this really at the time? I was not plugged into ECW.
It was almost impossible to watch ECW at the time. Like I would read about it all the time, but like actually watching it, like this is 97. Like there's barely an internet. Like watching it was extremely difficult. No pun intended. I do remember like 97. I think ECW was working with WWF at the time.
They did do,
right?
They did even do like an angle on Raw where like they were showing up. They were doing like their own invasion angle, sort of. I feel like inspired by the NWO. Because
I thought that Jerry Lawler showed up at, I don't know if it was Barely Legal, but he showed up at one of those ECW pay-per-views, and the crowd just hated his ass because like all Lawler did was bury ECW. Like any time that they talked about it on commentary.
Yes. Yep.
And I'm sure he really felt that way too. But I remember thinking that was like kind of cool, and I was like, I hope someone just puts this guy through like 6 tables. Like, let's go.
That ECW Barely Legal show did have to your point, a very cool wrestling match where a bunch of wrestlers from a Japanese promotion called Michinoku Pro also wrestled. So there's this like very famous like Michinoku Pro 6-man tag featuring the great Sasuke and Taka Michinoku, who would then later go on to be in the WWF. And so, yeah, there is a lot of cool stuff in there. I was not watching ECW. I had no idea what ECW was in 1997. But now, as a sicko, I do like combing through old ECW shows. Not everything is good.
It's similar,
or
stuff,
even like watchable.
I mean, even more so because it's more of a outlaw promotion or something like that. So there's a lot of even. Yeah, stuff that maybe you wouldn't want to show to your family members. Definitely not. But they had some great people on the roster at the time. There was
you had a singles match on this card between Lance Storm of Calgary, Alberta, by the way.
Shout out.
And Rob Van Dam. On Barely Legal.
They had a good roster. You had Raven was on there too at the time. He was like world champion, I think, right? At some point.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the card right now. So Tommy Dreamer pins Raven to win the title in a triple threat match, also involving Terry Funk.
Right, that's right.
According to this, was cut open, and this dude was just like bleeding like excessively, even by Terry Funk standards. So they were like trying to see if he was alive.
Speaking of other people who wrestled like basically until their death, yeah,
dude.
R.I.P.
Yeah, I was mostly
R.I.P. to the Funk.
I was mostly familiar with that, post like afterwards when they started to. I mean, kind of more when they did the invasion later in WWF, and they would talk about like certain guys as like, oh, they not started, but kind of got big there. So Chris Jericho and Eddie Guerrero and whatnot. So. It was more in retrospect, where you kind of learn and you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. Or the Dudleys were there too. So, yeah.
When I was a kid, I loved like the TLC matches, and it was always the Dudley Boys are from ECW, and I just assumed that everybody who wrestled with any kind of weapons had at some point been in ECW. So I was like, oh, the Hardy Boys, they had to have been in ECW. Edge and Christian, definitely in ECW.
I think I have
no way of confirming this or knowing anything about this. It's 1998. I don't have the internet. But yeah, I'm 1000% positive. I'm telling everyone else at school, Edge and Christian were in ECW.
I was just about to say, you would definitely tell your friends that to make it sound like you knew what you were talking about, for sure. Mm-hmm. That was also going on. We really didn't watch a lot of ECW together or anything, fair. But Vic, we covered it. What did we cover? We covered like Eddie Guerrero versus somebody on our show at one point. A great match. I can't remember what it was. It might have been Jericho actually, but yeah. And
we did talk about Terry Funk a good amount with the King of the Death match.
Yes, which I guess probably inspired a lot of what was going on in ECW as well. Like a lot of the death match. We watched a good amount of that stuff too, like the 90s. I always remember the guy with the sword that didn't really get to use it.
Tiger Jeet Singh.
Yeah, Tiger Jeet Singh. Yeah,
Yes.
running around with the sword. Or who was there? Leatherface was one of the people I remember too.
So, another plug for Vix Figs. There is a Tiger Jeet Singh figure, very rare. Sells for a minimum of $150.
Whoa!
Every time I get one in, it immediately flies off the shelf. People love this Tiger Jeet Singh, and he has the sword. It's in his mouth. He has the headscarf.
He's
very
over.
rare Chara Pro figure.
He's
Yeah.
he's super over.
People love him.
They need to push him. Yeah.
Strap the
It's not
rocket
too
to
late.
him.
Hey everyone, my name's Darren Hupke. I'm a writer, publisher, and podcaster. My podcast is called Pixels and Polygons. Each week I sit down with a guest and ask one simple video game question. It's a random topic each week and it leads to a fun conversation. You can find it on your favorite podcast platform every Friday, and you can read more about it at pixelsandpolygons.net.
I am the man. That's raw power. Look at his eyes. No fear at all. WCW Monday Nitro. This is where the big boys play.
It's man against man. Power, strength. It's art, painted with rage. And it's 100% live. Watch WCW Monday Nitro every Monday night at 8, exclusively on TNT.
At this time, when I was into the wrestling in the 90s and early 2000s, I was more into WCW. And at this time, I guess we could talk about maybe just some of the rising stars at that time. This 97 was really, that was when DDP really, he had been in the business for so long, but he established himself as kind of like a top star, like wrestling. In wrestling, you know, he had a feud with Macho Man that kind of put him more on the map, feuding with the NWO. You also had the debut of Goldberg in 1997. And along with Sting, who we'll talk a little bit more later, those I was the perfect like mark as a child. You know what I mean? Like those three as like kind of your heroes. Those were like my favorites. You know, so I think I really bought into like the storylines as a kid of like these guys as the good guys. You know,
I want to throw two people in there if I may.
Please, yeah.
Number one was Scott Hall. I thought he was so cool. This guy, like he was just like so awesome, and I thought he was even cooler in WCW than he was in WWF. I was always bummed that he never won the world title.
I know. Yeah,
I love Scott Hall, and I gotta say, man, I loved Chris Jericho in WCW. I thought this guy was like the funniest wrestler ever, like with Ralphus and the list and like him going to Congress or whatever to complain about losing his title. I loved Jericho.
We've seen that it's like by the end of 97 is when he really starts to kind of embrace the obnoxious. You've seen some of it. We're kind of sick of him now, obviously, but yes. I don't know. Actually, what do you think when we like I said, we don't like sit and watch this in depth or take notes, but what's your impression of like the young Chris Jericho, McKenna?
I don't know. He's just kind of he's younger. He
sounds more Canadian.
Yeah.
Do you feel like he's like grown into his Fozzy like rock star voice now? And when you watch him, then he sounds like a Canadian dude, and now he sounds like a guy trying to sound like he's the singer of like Bon Jovi or something, you know?
He's got the butt rock voice now. He definitely has the butt rock voice.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. Yeah, Scott Hall is good. Or I would just say this is the year after, but you know, we're still in like this is the NWO kind of era, and I think Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, like a little bit later, I thought were cool. Like when I got a little bit older, it was like NWO was cool, but when I was like real young, I was like, those are the bad guys. I don't think they're cool. And it's interesting to go back and watch because you do watch and like I think people think Scott Hall and Kevin Nash are cool. And this might just be like me retrospectively thinking this, but people hate Hogan. Like people hate Hollywood Hulk Hogan when he's out there. And it really does. I don't know. I think that's interesting. Like they go out and everyone's cheering NWO, whatever. But then Hulk Hogan gets out there and it's like, oh, yeah.
You know why that is? I think I have a theory that I think it's a pretty widespread theory, but like, I mean, in '97, more so in WWF, I guess, but like even to an extent in WCW, like wrestling isn't like as popular as it's about to be in '98 or '99 or etc. And like, so I think you had like a more like a hardcore wrestling audience then, and I think your hardcore wrestling audience like knows Hulk Hogan sucks even in '97. So like they're just booing his ass every time that they see him, and like. You know, I don't know. I don't know if that's good or if that's bad. I mean, he's supposed to be a heel, but like, I legit like could not stand Hogan anytime I saw him on TV for anything. But and like not even like I want to see him lose. I was like, I don't even want to watch this.
Yeah.
Even back then when I was like 10.
I was never a big fan, really. Yeah.
So,
no.
So Andy, to that point, I have seen interviews with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall where they're talking about making the NWO and like stylistically they're trying to do this like counterculture thing, this like anti-programming thing, and they're talking about like like you're thinking about the NWO and like the black and white vignettes and the commercials and the voiceover, and they were just like, we're trying to do something different, and they would get like they have said in interviews like that they would get frustrated with Hulk Hogan because he would immediately come in with the brother, like he would just do the same old shit.
Let me tell you something.
Had like a black coat of paint on, like he just had. Yes, it was always just like let me tell you, Mean Gene. Well, Mean Gene, and they were trying to do something that was like really different. And so even like amongst them, they were frustrated because it was literally just like a black and white paint job over the yellow and red. Whereas Kevin Nash and Scott Hall were like very specifically and strategically trying to do this whole like new like avant-garde for wrestling standards. Like, hey, this is different. Our commercials we're breaking the fourth wall. Buy this shirt or don't. We don't give a shit. Like that kind of thing. And Hulk Hogan, although he's wearing an NWO shirt, is still kind of doing the Hulk Hogan stuff.
Even like you can see them like a lot of what all of them are doing now like comes off as corny. Like a lot of things age funny, right? But they're trying to use like cool lingo and things like that, and Hulk Hogan's still coming out here and he's just being like, "Hey, you knucklehead," like he's like trying to be offensive, but he's like insulting you like your grandfather would, you know what I mean? Like it just comes off as McKenna, you've seen many a Hogan promo. We know so much about him now, obviously, but that specific time when you see him, what do you think?
It's a lot of brother. He does feel kind of like old, like
out of touch, maybe.
Yeah.
What do you think about his skin?
Weird looking.
He looks like he's made out of like the weird old rubber his figure was made out of when like when I was a kid. And you had that like old figure, and then I saw him. I was like, he must like feel like this weird. He's gross. He looks like He
looks like one of those fucking guys in Men in Black, like the alien that has like the people mask on that you just rip off. Like the blue guy at the very beginning, like that. Hogan has looked like that since like 1988. Like. Yeah. Anytime I saw him, I wanted to change the channel. The only time I could ever remember a Hogan match that I was like excited for, the two of them were Sting, because I was, as I'm sure, I'm jumping ahead here, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, but I was really excited for that. And then I was kind of excited for the Goldberg one.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, maybe. Okay, I was gonna talk about WWF stuff. Maybe we'll cap it off and we'll talk about the big thing that they had going for him was the NWO versus Sting feud. And McKenna,
my God,
I think Sting we both like. Sting is, I think, a common wrestler we share because you got to catch like the tail end of his career. What do you think about Sting the wrestler from what you've seen of him?
His AEW run was fun.
It was excellent. His retirement was incredible.
Perfect.
It was perfect. Yeah.
And then it was cool to like go back and see him through his different iterations.
Yeah, so you had like you saw a little bit of and you got to play as some too of his like his more surfer era, which I never really experienced as a kid, but it is fun and we love like the different colors of his uniform and face paint and stuff like that.
I love the rainbow stinger design.
The rainbow scorpion one, yes, very cool.
That's one of the best things. Absolutely.
So, people listening this much, we've referenced so many things. Hopefully you can keep up. But you had the NWO come in and like it was 96. They came in, Hall, Nash, Hogan, and they kind of took over, and they were kind of like the Death Riders of 1997. Let's just say, it's sort of in a way. Like I said, Hall and Nash, I think
they were like the Death Riders if they were like kind of not as bad.
Well, it's in some there's pros and cons with some of the guys, let's just say. But I think a lot of the feuds were Hogan getting awarded a lot of his title matches as his run as champion that year. He would usually lose or win in a controversial way, and oftentimes it was fine. It would be like he'd be feuding with like Roddy Piper, and one of the pay-per-views, maybe they did it too many times, but one of them I remember Roddy won, the crowd popped.
Starrcade 96.
That was okay. Crowd popped. They loved it. I watched it and I thought this is a good match, and then they screwed him out of the title later, and I was like, you know what? That's fine, because it's Roddy Piper. He's not there wrestling all the time, and he's older, whatever. But then they kind of just coast on that for like a whole year, and it does start to have that feeling of like, okay, like how long is this gonna go? This might be just me. I don't know how it felt at the time. You know what I mean? Like this might be in retrospect, but I think if I was watching at the time, I would feel like, okay, I'm ready for this to end. And Sting,
everything was heading to Starrcade to end in 97. Everything.
So Sting, people thought that he might join the NWO. I don't know if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And so then he, how would you describe it? He lost faith?
Yeah, I guess.
He kind of stopped associating with the roster. He disappeared for a while. He shows back up, and at first he's got clown makeup on. But then he
doesn't look good at first.
He's trying to figure himself out.
He's trying to figure himself out. He's like trying new things with his makeup, And
then he watched The Crow one weekend. I think I got it.
He's like, I'm broken. I'm broken, much like The Crow. But then I think he finds it, right, and I think Sting becomes like, it's awesome, like he's just like lurking the whole time. He becomes almost like The Crow was the thing, but it's almost like Batman, you know what I mean? He has that sort of mystique to him.
He's like this incredible force of nature. You know what? It was similar to when Goldberg would kill people in 97, because like it was like 5 minutes, but like that 5 minutes was unreal. And like when Sting would come down, man, with the bat, and he'd start beating the shit out of the NWO or like whoever, that was like, my God, that was like 10 out of 10. And it was so incredible because it only lasted for like a few fleeting minutes, and it was just like so unbelievable, especially because, Goo, as you were saying, like the NWO was like dominating, like they really was like a heel dominated company at that time. But kind of like with the Death Riders that we're seeing now, like there was a clear payoff coming, and yeah, Sting was just like so cool.
Yeah, I realized like how important Sting has been to me, like being a fan of wrestling, because I got out of it a little bit after WCW ended, and I didn't follow. I just didn't even realize at the time that Sting went to TNA or anything like that. And then it wasn't until it was a little bit before he came back to WWE that I started to watch a little bit, in like with the explosion of like CM Punk in this area, in the Chicago area. That was huge. But then, so I would watch a little bit, but then my friend Ben, who Vic, tells me,
yes.
he told me, that Sting might be coming back, and that got me hooked. Like, I wanted to start going to all the shows, and like I'd be looking up in the rafters, you know what I mean? And so he kind of brought me back to it, and then I went away from it a little bit, especially during COVID, and then I think actually it's CM Punk leading, and then Sting always keeps me hooked. But then when CM Punk came back to AEW, I got re-interested in AEW, but then Sting's whole run of retirement was kind of like what hooked me then for like the whole year after that, especially after Punk left. So like Sting for me is probably the most important wrestler of all time. I don't know if he's like the greatest or anything, but for me personally, he's like the most important wrestler of my life.
And Goo, you and I have talked about this at length. Very similarly, growing up watching WCW, like the longevity, and it's so, I don't know, and you three probably see this with video games too, of just like these characters that become like legacy characters, and it sort of doesn't matter at some point like the quality of the output. It's really just like, all right, this, like, it's consistently good enough, and people just like, hey, I have been a fan of this thing for so many years that I'm just going to keep being a fan.
Yes.
And so I think there's a little bit of that with Sting, not to discredit everything he's done, because however old he is, like, he was still killing it as an old man, jumping off stuff and diving through tables and like standing next to Darby Allin as Darby Allin fell through glass and stuff. So he was still putting in the work.
Yeah, that was one of my, I don't know. Because I went to, when I was really young, I only went to like a WWF house show, and I never saw Sting like when he did come back. That time I was like trying to find him, so it was like a dream come true when I went to like the Forbidden Door in Chicago. I think it was, he jumped off of one of the like entrance tubes they come out of. I think on the Young Bucks, actually. This is before I think it was on them, but yeah, that was like a incredible moment to actually get to see him do it, before he retired. So,
hell yeah,
Sting is awesome. So, this match was super hyped. Like they did a lot of special programming, like for the contract signing, all this stuff. Like it was really hyped to be a big deal, and it was, I think, genuinely, despite the stuff about Hogan that sucked, like you said, Andy, like it did feel like, here it comes. This is going to be a big moment.
It felt huge. And for context too, to anybody that might not know, like Starrcade is kind of, I think, generally accepted as like the WrestleMania of WCW. So it's like their big show, and like this, I gotta tell you, like as a newer wrestling fan, like even like at the time, like this is when I really started getting into it. Like I'd really probably only been paying it like real close attention for 6 weeks at this point, but this felt, even in that short time, like just the biggest matchup, like a changing of the guard, a natural ending for this really amazing NWO story. And it honestly, like this, there was nothing at the time, even maybe Brett and Shawn, but like even that kind of paled, I feel like, in comparison to how big this match felt to me, because they had built it up for like, what was it, Goo? Like over a year at this point, right?
Yeah, well over a year for sure. Like,
yeah,
at first it wasn't clear it was like Sting Hogan, it was just like, what Sting's like, what's he going through? But yeah, it became like any time there was like a suggestion of Hogan, like the "We Want Sting" chants were just like outrageous, you know what I mean? But the match, Vic, we covered this. We did an episode on their Starrcade match.
Sure did.
It didn't quite have the payoff people wanted, I don't think.
It stinks. It's not a good match. And
Terrible.
Andy, to your point, I wasn't even thinking about this, but like the streams cross, right? So like Survivor Series 97 happens, and I'm sure we'll talk about WWF in a second. Brett leaves, and then by this Starrcade, right? Is that they try and
he's
do
Starrcade?
That's his debut, basically.
Yes,
ish. Yeah, or not technically. He debuted before, but yeah.
Yes. And so they try to do like a weird Montreal Screwjob kind of thing. They try to like wink and nod at it. And it stinks. I remember being a kid and loving it. Like, and honestly, watching it Goo for the old podcast, it tarnished the memory for me because in my mind, I had such a positive memory of like, I begged my mom and dad to like buy the Starrcade pay-per-view. It was close to my birthday. A friend got to come and spend the night. And in my mind, I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest show ever. And like just having all of the childhood memories of it, I was like, yeah, it's great. And then we watch it. And I was like, oh, I've been misremembering this whole thing.
Yeah.
And it kind of stinks.
For me,
it's a little bit
being like, very confused watching it as a kid. And I have more thoughts, but Goo.
Well, I just want to say, I don't remember this specifically, but for me, stuff like this at the time, it was like I had little kid logic in a way. So it was honestly what Hulk Hogan got away with as a babyface a lot of times. Like he would screw people over. Yeah, but if you're a kid and you're a fan, it like young enough, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It's like, so for me, when I would see stuff like that, it would just be like the guy that I hate he got shut down. The guy I like won. Who cares if it like I didn't understand the minutia of like, like whether the call was legal or not like that. I was just like, it'd be like, fuck you, Hulk Hogan or whatever, Sting rocks.
Just like watching that match though, like I remember watching it. I'm this is 97, so I'm 10. And I was like, I know Hogan's the bad guy. I know Sting's a good guy, but I'm watching this and I was like, Sting cheated. Like Hogan just pinned him, and not only did Sting cheat, but Bret Hart cheated too. Like, what's happening? And like
after he just got screwed over too, it's
honestly like this fucking match, dude, is like inexcusable.
Yeah,
inexcusable for how. And some people have tried to like kind of say it wasn't that bad in years since.
No,
like I think like. This is the most inexcusable wrestling match, like finish that you've ever seen and ever will see. So after the Montreal Screwjob, Bret Hart leaves. He's coming to WCW, and we all know, or at least I think we all know what happened there. And if we don't, we'll talk about it in a bit.
He got screwed. That's all you need to know.
He got screwed. Yeah. So this big matchup between Hogan and Sting is being built up, and during the matchup, the match starts, and Hogan just kicks Sting's ass like the whole fucking match. And Sting eventually comes with his big comeback, and then something happens, and Hogan like gets the upper hand again. He gives him the boot, he gives him the leg drop, and he fucking pins him 1, 2, 3. And what was supposed to happen is the referee was supposed to do a fast count because they were trying to screw Sting, and they were going to do like a wink wink to the Montreal Screwjob. And at that point, special enforcer or whatever, Bret Hart is supposed to come out and be like, not again. We will not stand for this injustice over in WCW. And so he's just like, it's supposed to restart the match. So he does come and restart the match. And then Sting puts Hogan in the Scorpion Deathlock. And then Hogan doesn't even tap out, actually. They just like immediately ring the bell. But like the referee doesn't do a fast. It's like 1 and 2 and 3. And in years after, the legend is that Eric Bischoff went to the referee and was like, do a fast count. And Hulk Hogan went to this referee, Nick Patrick, and was like, do not do a fast count. I want you to count nice and slow. And Nick Patrick said, like, between Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan, I thought Hulk Hogan had more sway. So I listened to Hulk Hogan. And it made Sting look like shit. It made Bret Hart look like shit. It made WCW look like shit. And it really only made Hulk Hogan look good to like the complete detriment of everything else.
So I don't know if this was surprise you, McKenna, but this is actually part of a long line of things that Hulk Hogan has done. Like outside of like the more morally horrible things he's done. We're talking about in wrestling. Well, even then he's done horrible things, but just from a creative standpoint, he's done a lot of things to the detriment of the business and other wrestlers to make himself look good. Another one I think of actually is against Bret Hart in the early 90s. Correct?
93.
He refused to drop the belt to Bret Hart, right? So they had to do a weird schmaz for that as well. So
So McKenna, imagine if like at All In, Hangman Adam Page, who is going to win the title. Like I would bet you my house that he wins this title. But imagine that like John Moxley instead is just like, you know what? Hey, Audrey Edwards, instead of doing that fast count it nice and slow. And they don't have like Hangman win. Like that was this was probably even worse than that, but like to give you context of like how awful this would be.
So I'm obviously like, fuck Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan sucks. He's the worst. A terrible human being, not a good wrestler. But I do think, and they don't present it this way now, but I do think like, and I'm sure we're going to talk about the Montreal Screwjob, but this era is, I think, the start of like the blurring of the lines that a lot of people who like wrestling now like really seek out of like, okay, what is actually happening? I do think before this, right, before the Montreal Screwjob, before this Hulk Hogan stuff, and now we know about all this stuff, and we know about the politics, and we know about like the real world impacting the stage show. Like I feel like that is what a lot of people are drawn to now, are like seeking out now. The reason that wrestling like became so popular and remains so popular is because it is that kind of like blurred line between, is this supposed to happen or is this not supposed to happen, right? And you don't get that with a lot of other entertainments, and so stuff like this does really straddle that line. And again, they didn't present it this way at the time. I don't think, like, I think they, right, like, they celebrate as if Sting won. They try to retcon the whole thing on Nitro over the next couple of weeks. But this is like, at least for me, and a lot of people I know, like, hey, this is kind of why people watch wrestling. Even like AEW now, right? There's always that thing of just like, was that supposed to happen?
Right.
Did that person really, like, what's going on, right? There is like and I think that's why so many people like it, because it is this weird blurring of fiction and nonfiction, and I do think that starts, like, it really starts in this time frame. And so obviously the match stinks and Hulk Hogan sucks forever, but I am like, I don't know, I'm interested in like that trajectory.
It does feel like something that someone, like, I would also had believed like that someone there was like, we're just gonna do the Montreal Screw, because it's not out of WCW. Like they started doing the blending, you know, they had wrestlers showing up using their real names and stuff like that. So they, and then and they do chase that dragon until their demise, where it's like they're, and to again, like, to their detriment, like the later era, they go crazy with the meta stuff. I don't know, we talk about that even when wrestling, like, does the reality aspect of it, like we speculate on that sort of stuff when we watch, even to this day. Like, is that something you're interested in when it comes to wrestling, or like you just kind of like the characters in general, right?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I wouldn't say I like seek out that.
Yeah, you're not like looking for the gossip or whatever, but
yeah. Sometimes like there are injuries that happen while we're watching. I'm like, was that real or was that fake? Because they'll sell it really well.
Yeah, and they do blur the lines of that. Even
sometimes they like sell it in a way that's like, okay, that probably didn't actually hurt them. Like it probably still hurt, but in a serious way. But sometimes things happen, and I'm like,
you get
that
nervous.
Looked bad.
You're not sure, and then you find out later.
Bryan Danielson or the Sami Zayn, like the convulsing and like, oh my god, you actually get a concussion right now.
Does that a lot, yeah.
Yes.
So this was, I mean, they tried to recover. They did get the belt on Sting by the next pay-per-view. Again, controversially, I think. They do play it up a little bit. I will say Hulk Hogan, but again, that might just be Hulk Hogan going to business for himself. But he does go out on TV and complain about it, like he got screwed, and they bring out the referee and all that stuff. But that 97 was kind of like the peak for WCW, and I feel like they have some good stuff left in them. Like, I think fondly of some stuff that comes after, but this was like kind of their chance to like kind of set up Sting as a big, I mean, he is a big star still, but this does kind of like,
they could have made him like the guy. The guy, and now he kind of was but he wasn't the guy. Like, Hogan was still the guy, but he was old and people didn't want him. And I think that like you can I don't know. This was just like so, and I know that there's a lot of other stuff that like happened, like both creative and like in the real world that led to WCW's demise.
Yes,
But, like,
yeah.
this was just like the biggest. Just like it was a layup, and I don't know, they went for a 3-pointer across the court or something. They thought they were trying to be clever. They overthought it. Terrible.
But to Sting's credit, I will say he due to himself. He kept himself as the guy, I think, for his whole career. You know what I mean? And he got to go out better than anyone's ever gone out. So you know what? In the end, I don't feel too bad about it because he had a great knack for self-preservation. Let's just say. Let's put a cap on this. We'll talk about what was going on in the WWF and the Montreal Screwjob. Real quick, similar to WCW, I wanted to mention you had rising stars at the time. You had The Rock really coming into his own, like in the Nation of Domination and stuff like that. I imagine you're very familiar with The Rock, McKenna, so it's kind of goofy to watch and fun to watch him doing his thing then, right?
Yeah. I don't even. Yeah, he's probably one of the first wrestlers I was aware of.
Yeah.
But by that point, it was like, okay, he's an actor now
because of movies, right?
Yeah.
And you also had this was the year Kane debuted. And they were doing the whole storyline with the Undertaker. Andy's making a face like again with unpleasant things to talk about from this time period. I think talking about the Kane and the Undertaker, they're both guys I don't really like thinking about.
It's gotta be Kane.
Yeah,
I will say this, like, real world aside, and Goo, you know this, I've never liked the Undertaker, and I've never liked Kane ever.
I thought Kane was badass when I was a kid, for sure. I thought he was, the flames and stuff I bought into. I mean, not a fan. I don't think, even watching it back, I don't think he's very good. But they got a lot out of, like, they would feud with guys like Mick Foley, and he was doing all his characters around this time. So shout out to Mick Foley, who wasn't really a rising star, but we're a year before the Hell in a Cell, I guess. So that's something.
The first Hell in a Cell happens in 1997, right?
So
Undertaker
Shawn
and Shawn
Michaels?
Michaels.
Yeah.
Is that in
Gotta be
1997?
Kane, yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
And then, of course, let's just talk about the Montreal Screwjob and like Bret Hart. Andy, I know for you, we were gonna talk about more Bret Hart matches, and we never got around to it. But you're a Calgary native.
Can I rewind? I want to get there, Goo, but can we just like super quickly talk about the greatest in your house of all time?
What was
Canadian Stampede?
Okay.
Emanating from the Saddle Dome in Calgary, Alberta.
Sure, yeah. What's your memories of this, or what do you know? What do you love about this?
So my memories are only like the post, because like I wasn't that much into wrestling at the time, but like I think like you watch this pay-per-view, and so like the rest of the pay-per-view is kind of like whatever. The Undertaker's the champion. I can't even remember who. I think he fights Vader or Farouk or something. But like, so the main event is this wicked 10-man tag with the Hart Foundation on one side. Or no, well, it's a 5-man tag, or there's 5 per team, whatever. So you got the Hart Foundation, and I think you got like Austin and like the Road Warriors and Goldust and someone else. But like, the crowd in Calgary, because this is also at the peak of like Bret Hart's like US versus Canada like feud, and like all the Harts are from Calgary, and the crowd is absolutely unreal. There's points, if you watch it, you can watch the hard cam shaking like there's an earthquake, because like this crowd is going crazy for these guys. And Owen Hart gets the pin in the win, and I think he actually pinned Steve Austin.
Yes, they had a feud going on.
Maybe not us. Yeah, one of them. But like, and I think this is also Bret Hart's first match back. I think he had like an injury or something like that. So like, this was just like the most unreal pay-per-view to like watch, and it obviously like holds a sentimental spot for me, just being from my hometown. I think it's the only pay-per-view that's ever taken place in Calgary.
Oh, really?
To this day.
Wow. So Bret Hart, I mean, I know he's got to be one of your favorite wrestlers, right? And you were
Totally,
even watching in that period when he's big, but I think his impact on wrestling is come, and you go back and watch that stuff, and he is excellent. Yeah.
So in downtown Calgary, actually, right now, and I think I've told you about this, Goo. There's a bar. It's called Hitman's Bar, and it's it's a wrestling bar, and it's basically part of the casino that's beside the Saddle Dome. And I have not went because I don't know what I've been holding out for. Maybe for you two to come down to Canada, but like
I would love to.
I'm finally going next month to Hitman's Bar, so I'll have to report back.
Please. Yeah, I mean, I love Bret Hart. A lot of what his kind of like trajectory in '97 sums up a lot of the big events in WWF. So we'll talk about that. But we actually, we didn't watch a lot of his wrestling together, but we did watch the Wrestling with Shadows documentary that I think Vic, you and I covered back on our show. But McKenna, what was your like impression of Bret the Hitman Hart from watching this documentary? He's kind of an interesting figure, I would say. I think it's a good documentary, even if you're not into wrestling.
Yeah. I mean, he seems like a nice guy. Passionate about what he does.
Very passionate. He takes it very seriously.
Takes it very seriously
to this day. You know.
I mean, that comes off in what he does, how he wrestles.
The thing that really stuck out to me watching it now was like the overlap between, like, his upbringing is so interesting, like the wrestling oriented family and Stu Hart kind of being like this stern figure, and how he basically worked with him and then transitioned to working for the WWF, and kind of Vince kind of coming in and taking that role. And it's something that colors me now because like, not to get modern and dark about it, but when you see a lot of the ways people talk about Vince, you know, in their defenses or even just like discussing their relationship with him, you do realize like, oh, he did kind of like imprint himself on a lot of young wrestlers, like as like this father figure. And I think even though Bret had this father figure in his life, I don't think it's a coincidence that he like basically his company got bought by Vince and then he goes under, like, you see that dynamic at play throughout the documentary of like where he's so loyal to Vince and he does not want to betray him despite the fact that he has like every right to. I think, you know what I mean?
I think Bret Hart never wanted to leave and go to WCW. Like they basically forced him to go to WCW, like because they weren't, Vic, maybe you could correct me, but like I don't think they were going to pay his contract because he signed a big money contract at some point, because like WCW, it was like a 20-year
contract or something like that.
Yeah. And then they essentially went back on it after they signed it, or Vince McMahon did, rather.
Yeah, and they talk about that in Wrestling with Shadows, and I feel like in Beyond the Mat a bit, like they talk about just like that weird. And I'm always I don't know, curious. I would love to talk to some of those folks who speak of Vince McMahon in this like paternal role of just like, what is going on here? Like, this is your boss. Like, I don't know. And maybe it's a generational thing. I'm just like, this person's my boss. That's all they are. They're not my dad. They're not my mom. I'm not related to them. They sign my paychecks. But so many people speak of Vince McMahon with so much reverence as like, and even Bret Hart, who like is, even to this day, like Bret Hart still is like willing to go to WWE and do all this stuff, and just like, I don't know, is it the like the idea that like this is where the power is and this is where like the fame and the money is? Because you're right, Andy, like he signs that contract, or he wants to sign that 20-year contract, and then Vince McMahon like reneges on it and basically tells him like, no, you have to go. Like, and in Wrestling with Shadows, I feel like there's a scene where Vince McMahon is just like, no, I think you should go to WCW. They'll pay you more. And just like, what a weird abusive stepfather kind of thing is going on here. Like this weird negging. But so many people just speak of him, just like, even now with everything, there's so many people that can't bring themselves to say something negative about Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
And I am very curious about what kind of like, I don't know, magic trick, voodoo.
Well, and look, it's
curse he has put on these people.
It's colored even weirder when you know, like, with some of the wrestlers, he did, like, there was, like, human trafficking, sex stuff going on. And I'm not saying that happened here, but it does make you wonder, like, who did he do what stuff with? You know what I mean? And it does, when you see him getting all, like, emotional sometimes, I don't know. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird to think about, you know, like, what was that freak doing at this time, you know, apart from what we already know?
That's a good question.
I think that like literally plays a huge part in what happened in Montreal, because it's almost like you've got two kids fighting for their dad's approval, and like one of them is gonna be the favorite child and the other one is gonna be out of the family. Like that seems like Montreal.
That reminds me too of something that always, I think we've talked about this a lot, Andy, but something that always drives me crazy was when there's been conflict with wrestlers in AEW and people would be like, Vince wouldn't let this happen. Now we're not going to, obviously there's all the crimes that happened under his watch, but we were watching McKenna Wrestling with Shadows. They were talking about Brett and Sean tearing each other's hair out and fighting in the locker room. I'm like, he absolutely did let this happen. And the way he settled it was by like, well, I'm going to make the other guy champion. You know what I mean? Like that's the biggest bunch of bullshit I've ever heard. You're like,
not only did he let it happen, this shit was encouraged, like friction among the locker room. From everything I've heard, multiple podcasts, stuff like for people that were there, like this was encouraged to keep the competitiveness and like keep people pushing for more and more. So like,
can you imagine if your workplace operated like this, McKenna?
I'd fight everybody.
And there is like a weird level of Stockholm syndrome. Like, that's this is a whole nother conversation. I was just talking to someone about the concept of wrestlers court. Are any of you familiar with wrestlers court?
Which you're thinking about that
fucking kangaroo court.
Is that you want the Undertaker to be making like decisions on how things should be? Yeah,
and that's McKenna, to your point, where's human resources? Like, we're just going to have, what qualifications does this Blue Lives Matter freak have about
we're gonna put
making human resources related?
We're going to put Mean Mark in charge.
Why is he in charge?
So
is it just because he's the tallest? Like, what's the requirements here
this is
to lead this thing?
I was thinking of Kane. Like, there was like the period of time where people are like, Kane is the smartest guy in wrestling. Do you remember that? Because he was like a libertarian.
I remember hearing that about Val Venus too, back in like the early 2000s.
Jury's still out on that one, I think. No, but okay. From a little bit from a creative standpoint, though, I want to talk about it. So at that time, Bret Hart did that kind of classic image of a wrestler. Took it very seriously, as you said. Took his role as like a hero very seriously. I think he took all his wins seriously. And that was at the time, we mentioned it, but when WWF wanted to get on like being more racy and stuff like that. So you did have like, that was like Shawn Michaels became very risque. Then you had the rise this year. You had the rise of Stone Cold Steve Austin as like this anti-hero. And I think they did encourage Bret to they wanted to turn him heel, but to still kind of stay true to what he believed. And when we watched some of his promos over the past few years during this time period when he's doing the anti-USA thing, and I think he is genuinely like really compelling and like really great. Like I mean, sometimes some of the things he says about the United States, they kind of
they resonate.
They're true. They're true.
There's some vague like where he's like, guys read those magazines you're in, Shawn Michaels. Where it's like, okay, Brett, like that's not the problem.
He certainly says some things that are like, because we'll talk a lot about positively about Brett, I'm sure, but like he consistently, one thing that he goes back to is like when he's making fun of Shawn is like he'll use like some.
He never says anything like he never uses any like
it's never like outright homophobic, but it's there if you look for it. It's on the line.
Andy, I do have to ask though, just from your perspective as a is it a Calgarian? Yeah.
Shout out
as a Calgarian. So like, I remember being a kid, and I'm not at 9 years old, not into the nuanced geopolitical commentary that's happening here. But like you see Bret Hart in America and he's constantly booed, and it's right. They talk about like Bizarre World in Canada. He's cheered. Do you remember like around this time? Is Bret Hart universally beloved, even though he's portrayed as like someone who is booed on TV all the time? Like, are people in Canada just like, we're not falling for this? We know that Bret Hart is right, and we're gonna cheer him no matter what. Was he still celebrated in Canada?
Bret Hart was celebrated all across the world except for the United States. Like
I remember
in Canada, like there was, I bet like there was probably in 1997, there was probably Wayne Gretzky and Bret Hart. Like I like those were like the two biggest names in sports. And maybe I'm forgetting
and
someone
now
else.
Brett surpassed him. He surpassed Wayne.
Oh,
obviously.
Yeah, Wayne sucks now. Like,
we got to bring that up as much as we can on this show. That Wayne sucks.
Which really pains me to say, actually, because my email has 99 in it for Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah, what can you do? You know.
Yeah,
we'll do a separate Wayne Gretzky app someday. I'm sure.
But like if you go and look anywhere, like Europe, or I think they went to
to like
Kuwait or something like this around this time, even like
South Africa.
Everybody loves Bret Hart.
Yeah.
The people that don't are the people that he is calling out.
One promo where he's like, "We don't kill each other with guns. We have healthcare. I'm like, fuck, dude, rub it in. Like, I'm on your
valid point.
I'm on your side.
Valid point.
I'm on your side. Don't rub it in. But he did play it pitch perfect. Like, he was incredible, and it's a whole thing. Well, like where we could talk about this. We can't get into it, but like the match he had with Stone Cold, where they did the full double turn.
Double turn. Yeah.
I think you saw a little bit of that when Stone Cold, he didn't give up and Bret left him in like a bloody heap, that was an incredible match. We'll definitely have more time in the future. I think 98 might be a better year to talk about Stone Cold Steve Austin, but this was a fire feud. And obviously he had the whole thing with Owen Hart too, which I mean, I guess he got hurt from, but big banner year for him. But let's fast forward and we'll talk about the screw job. We kind of already described what it was, right? But the idea was they wanted Bret to drop the title. He had this horrible, like, where he was getting in fights with Shawn Michaels. He was like anybody but him. But they basically lied to him, right? They tricked him.
Not only. Sorry to interrupt you,
please.
But just to add content, like, not only did he say, like, I'll drop it to anybody but him, but he said he would drop it to Shawn Michaels, just not in Canada, because at the time, this rivalry had certainly escalated. There was, like, a ton of personal beef between these guys. And, like, Shawn Michaels, I remember I hated Shawn Michaels. I still don't like Shawn Michaels, actually. Like, he was, like, he had the Canadian flag. He was, like,
he put it
rubbing it on his crotch, like picking his nose, and it was just like, fuck this guy. Like, I'm with Bret Hart. Yeah.
You probably agree with it. We only saw little bits of Shawn Michaels in like D-Generation X, but like they never fully quite stuck with me. And honestly, watching it back, it's like it's shitty, honestly, a lot of what they're doing. Not even because it's like offensive. It's just like it might just be a 90s thing, but they're so corny. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I hate them.
Yeah.
That has definitely not aged well. Again, in 1997, being a 9-year-old,
you got to stick up for yourself.
And just like, yes. There is a little bit of like again, this is what 9-year-old boys are interested in, right? Like, poop art jokes, like the whole bit with the riot gear masks while they talk to Sergeant Slaughter, who's spitting.
That was so
with the little windshield wipers.
Yeah, I bet if
9-year-old me was like, oh my god, this is the peak of comedy.
I think if I was in your position,
and I might see boobs.
If I was in your position, I think I would feel the same, because I did kind of glom onto some of their stuff. I loved Mr. Ass, at the time, so I was into that. But
a little later,
yeah, because that's when I was watching it. So I sort of get what you're saying, but it never stuck with me, and it's hard to rewatch again. Not because it's offensive, but it's just like, it just makes me cringe, like from embarrassment a little bit. But yeah,
do think some of that stuff like it doesn't stand the test. It feels so dated. Like there are some things that are like classic, like timeless. Like Bret Hart is a classic wrestler that could exist in multiple eras. Degeneration X can only exist in one era.
Especially because when you see when they try to bring them back multiple times, it's even lamer. Yeah. It's pathetic. It's like
but Bret Hart has existed and has presented and wrestled throughout decades and decades and is always, or Sting, right? Sting is a timeless wrestler.
You're saying he's the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be, right? Yeah. Mr. Ass, also a timeless wrestler, obviously. He's still going. And Jeff Jarrett, actually, as we see Jeff Jarrett pop up a lot. And Goldust. I want to shout some of them out, but...
Hey, well, Bill Goldberg is wrestling in like a month here, by God.
Yeah. Ugh. Wait, so the screw job, I guess the way it works, right, is Vince tells the ref, you're gonna count him out when he gets put in his own hold. The ultimate disrespect. Yeah. The ref tells Bret, I'm not going to do that. Or he doesn't even tell him that. He's like, yep, everything's cool, you know? And
so to add some context here. So the agreed finish of this match was a schmoz. Like everybody's just coming in for their run-ins. Everybody's going to like, whatever. It's going to be a DQ. And Bret thinks he's going to drop the belt later on Raw. He's just going to vacate it, which to be fair, I will concede, like you do want your champion, if they're leaving, you probably want them to put someone over, but like there were other options. But
you even, I know you wouldn't like this, but like the Undertaker or somebody could have just come beat him, right? You know?
I think Undertaker would have been good. I think, and then anyway, so like, so it's supposed to be a schmoz, and a couple of people are warning Bret Hart about like, hey, be careful, don't get into any holds, make sure that you are kicking out promptly. And so Bret Hart goes to Earl Hebner and is like, I've known you, Earl Hebner, for like 10 years or whatever. Like, do you have my back? And Earl Hebner's like, yep, I got you. But the night before, Vince McMahon and Shawn Michaels and Triple H and I think it was like Jerry Briscoe or something like that are talking about fucking Bret in this match, and they're like, where are we gonna do it? That was my biggest thing. I do remember this very clearly, being a kid, being like, I can't believe that Bret got beat with his own move. Mm-hmm. Like that was
makes
just like
him
the
look
ultimate
bad in his home country. Like it really felt like a spit in the face. He hawks that big loogie on Vince. That's he's very good to see. He punches him out later. That's
and he's riding WCW in the air with his finger,
smashing stuff. Yeah. So that's at least cool that he got to cause some damage on his way out. I always remember in that documentary, his wife is super pissed, and she's like really putting the screws to Triple H, and both him and Shawn Michaels are denying they know about it. And I don't know how you feel watching it, McKenna, but I was watching. I'm like, these guys are full of shit. Like they're so full of shit.
1000%.
And I hope I don't remember Bret's wife's name. I apologize, but I hope her curse hasn't come true yet. But she says to Triple H, like, did you know about this? And he's like, I swear to God I didn't. And she said, I swear to God, all you like, one of these days, God is going to strike you down. And so far, he's only gotten to fail like upwards in trajectory, but I'm hoping her curse comes true someday. I think there's still a chance it could with everything that's going on with his family and everything. But God, that's a pain. McKenna, what do you think about all this as an outside observer? Because I feel like if I didn't know about wrestling at all, and then you were like, and you told me, and I don't want to dismiss wrestling, we all love it here, but it's like, if you told me like, oh, like this guy didn't want to lose this scripted thing, like, you know, it's really with all the context of everything that it's like, you understand it and you're like, this sucks. But when you step away from it, it's not even in like the top 20 most evil things Vince McMahon has ever done, certainly. And I could sort of see how like outside observer would be like who cares? Even though it is like one of the like the biggest event in wrestling that year. I don't know. What did you think about that at the end of the documentary? Like, how did you feel about it for Brett or otherwise? Like, what was your takeaway?
I mean, it sucks. You know, you feel bad for him because he tried so hard. He felt like he wanted to make things work where he was.
Yeah, and he wanted to maintain some of his dignity.
Yeah, when he agreed to go out, he was like, okay, well, like, let me do it on my own terms. And then he wasn't able to do that.
Yeah, and he has been made out by some people over the years since to be like he was being unreasonable, or you know, there's Vince came on, did the whole Brett screwed Brett thing, and he kind of gained this reputation, but I think he had every right to be mad. And then obviously future events with him and with Owen and everything, like he has every right to basically, he has like a free pass, I think, to hate that entire organization for like the rest of his life. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's any amount of anger he could show that would be unreasonable. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
See, and you say that, and I agree. But over the years, he has come back. If there was a person involved with my brother's death, I would never want to see that person again for no amount of money, right? But there is Brett, like, on TV with Vince McMahon, and that's, like, again, that's that weird thing of just, like, is it really just about, like, the money? Is it, like, about the access to, like, fame and stardom? Well, if the person who like oversaw my brother's death was like, "Hey, you want to come be on TV with me?" I would say I would punch that person. I would spit in their face. I would like, absolutely not, never in a million years. And so, what's going on there? I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot this whole conversation.
And I
think, sorry, Goop.
Well, I think in recent years, you know, you've seen him. I think just with all the other stuff that's come out about him, you've seen him come more to terms with who Vince is a little bit. And, you know, at the time where he came back and stuff, there was no other really option. And I think he probably bought into a little bit of that, like, well, it's kind of the pressure people put on Martha Hart, where they're like, some people are like, you need to do this to honor Owen, which I think is such bullshit. I think the biggest thing she's ever done to honor Owen in wrestling, because obviously his foundation is way more important than wrestling, but the Owen Hart tournament and all that stuff is, I think, a way better way to honor his legacy than put him in a Hall of Fame of the company that killed him.
Not letting him in the Hall of Fame is much more honorable. Yes. Like, because then people still, talk about Owen and
but to Brett's credit, I think part of him maybe did buy into what people say of like, if I make peace, like that's like a way of healing or something. I don't know. But Andy, what's your take on it?
I feel like it's tough. Again, you're almost seeing this right now. You mentioned CM Punk earlier. Like I think he's in Saudi Arabia as we speak, and he's getting a ton of shit for it. And
sure is.
I'm a big CM Punk fan, and I was disappointed that he went. And I'm not going to make excuses for Bret Hart or for CM Punk, but I will say, like, I guess maybe there comes a point where it's like the WWE is going to make money off of Bret Hart if Bret Hart is there or not. So, like, I don't know. Maybe it's like, I might as well just come in and have this shitty ass match and beat the shit out of Vince McMahon. And like, I don't know. I guess I can maybe see like where it's like, you've carried this for so long. Maybe you're just like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to cash in on what happened to me because everyone else is. So, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but maybe that's the reality of it. I don't know.
That's fair.
I will say one of my favorite quotes about wrestling that I've ever read is when Bret Hart describes how he knocked out Vince McMahon. This was like, I knocked him out with one punch, and it was the greatest punch I ever threw. It was an absolutely beautiful uppercut right between the arms. I lifted him about a foot off the ground, broke my hand, but it was the sweetest punch I ever threw, and I wouldn't change anything about it, and Vince McMahon can rot in hell.
Hell yeah.
Do you find yourself playing older games and wishing that there were new discussions about those games? Enter Tales from the Backlog. Hi, I'm Dave Jackson, and on each episode, I'm joined by a guest to break down those games that may be stuck in your ever-expanding backlog. Each episode looks at one game in depth, focusing on mechanics, story, music, and other aspects with no spoilers until a clearly marked spoiler wall in the middle. If you've played the game, go ahead and climb that spoiler wall and enjoy in-depth story discussions, and if not, jump out when we warn you and maybe go play that game for yourself. We have over 100 episodes in the feed, everything from Disco Elysium to Tunic to discussion episodes about how to get into horror games, and if games actually need to be fun, or if they have more to offer. I guarantee that there's something in there for everybody. Once again, that's Tales from the Backlog, available wherever your podcasts are found.
Damn, I do love that.
It's kind of a good cap on the discussion here, but I will say this is more down the road, but it is sad because it is kind of, we talked about Starrcade kind of being the end of like the peak of WCW, but I also think it's kind of the end of like the peak of Bret Hart, you know what I mean? And like he kind of has a less than stellar run in the future in WCW. You know, he fights Ric Flair. We didn't really talk about when I was a kid. I was confused that if he was a wrestler or not. I just thought he was like the president of wrestling because he would just come out and cut a promo every week in a suit, and I'm like, who is this guy? But anyway, just kind of a, I think a sad, way for it to go out. But I don't know. If you ask me, I think the two most like important wrestlers of '97 are Sting and Bret Hart. Which, ironically, they have kind of like the same finishing move.
Yeah, I think you can make that case. Maybe like Austin in there the mix. Maybe you probably have to include Hogan in there too. But I think the I guess no pun intended. Sorry, but like the heart and soul of those companies was Sting and was Bret Hart. Like they were the guys that was so easy to like root around and get behind, and both of them got screwed. So what does that say about wrestling? I don't know.
That is a great point. I think that speaks volumes about wrestling, for sure.
I do have a question for the two of you, just because I know, so much of what you do is like dissecting aspects of the 90s. And I feel like the retrospective lens is always like, oh, this era was a microcosm of the greater culture. Mm-hmm. With the other culture that the two of you have consumed from this era, do you feel like this mirrors other popular culture or no?
Big time. When you think about video games, sorry, I have, you might have.
Yeah. The kind of vibes.
Video game advertising.
Just look at the advertising for Nintendo games at the time, and it's a very similar vibe.
Like, think about it like this way. I've said this before, and Andy, you won't like this comparison, but you got Bret Hart and you got Kirby. two guys in the respective industry who, they work a specific style, a specific presentation. They're these lovable heroes to inspire children everywhere.
Similar colorways.
Similar colors. Now,
oh geez.
Go watch a Kirby ad from Japan, and it nails the vibe of what a Kirby game is. It's like, hey, he's a cool guy and everyone loves him and he's strong and tough and cool. You turn on like a Kirby ad in America and it's like, hey, play Kirby, you little bitch. He's gonna kick your ass. He's like beating up bikers and stuff like that. So yeah, I think definitely the attitude of the time. It was the attitude era, the play it loud. Sega does what Nintendo don't. Like, there was the console wars as well as the Monday Night Wars. There's a lot of that. Like, we're getting edgy now. I don't know.
That must also be like coincide with the rise of the internet at that time.
Big time.
Have you guys found that kind of?
Internet is like everything is like, we've got a website now. Even in like the State of the Union address, Bill Clinton was like, we got a website now. He also
America.com.
He also gets embroiled in like a sex scandal, so I guess that kind of crosses over. You start to see like South Park signs at all wrestling events, so it's definitely like the edgy. There's like that edgy 90s that, again, a lot of it, I think some of it just holds up because it's just straight up, or doesn't hold up because it's straight up offensive, but other stuff is just like, oh, this is try hard. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So yeah.
But again, to that point, I think that documentary, Beyond the Mat, like that sort of stuff, is like the start of what really makes wrestling like so interesting, at least for me personally, is like that blurring the lines. There's no other like video games or movies or I don't know. I'm really into immersive theater. If any of you are familiar, right? And wrestling is theater in so many ways. But I feel like this is that era where the lines get blurred, and for better or for worse, makes it more like captivating, right? And I don't know, it's like, what came first? Was reality TV influencing this, or was wrestling influencing reality TV? There's so many of these things that are like interwoven together in this period of time.
I guess they get stuff like Jerry Springer or like those type of things, and Howard Stern,
right.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. And not to be too like, I don't know, philosophical about it, but I do think it speaks to like, I don't know, the human need at that time to have like authenticity. Like people were wanting like real things. Like they wanted like real human interactions, right? Or they wanted like what they believed to be like a genuine response to something.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it not just with wrestling, but if you're looking at like TV and pop culture from the 80s, things are kind of like buttoned down and preppy, and here's these sitcoms that portray everything in like a very like easily digestible way, right? And so I do think 1997 for a lot of media, including wrestling, is like the start of like making things more complex, right? TV shows and movies get more complex, like just characters become more multifaceted. Wrestling doesn't just become like good guys versus bad guys. And you know, obviously a lot of negative shit contributed to that.
The Vince McMahon,
but that makes the world more interesting.
We think wrestling could be more than good guys and bad guys.
We're tired of insulting your intelligence.
You're basically saying you agree with Vince McMahon and like his whole philosophy
that's what we're gonna
wrestling and life in general. Yeah.
1,000%. Yep, you heard it here first. Big Vince McMahon guy over here. Yep.
You got any action figures over at Vince McMahon action figures?
Do you have do-rag Vince?
No.
Don't pull the string on that
probably goes for a lot.
Yeah. There is a very rare Linda McMahon figure, not Japanese.
Wow.
But they made one Linda McMahon figure.
That's good. That will complete my collection. I'm trying to fill out my collection of Trump's cabinet members. I got my RFK in the mail. Yeah.
Sweet.
All right, let's get out of here. Vic, thank you so much for coming on. It's great to tell you. We don't talk about wrestling as much anymore, so it was nice to talk to you again. I was thinking about maybe I could mine the depths of our old podcast and find any relevant ones to this time period, and maybe republish them. Put them out on our maybe I'll throw them up on like our Patreon or something for people if there's demand. I think we have some wrestling fans who listen. So, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
As always, thank you for having me.
Yeah. And Andy, thank you for bringing the Calgary Flame to this one.
I see what you did there. Yeah, fun fact, there is a junior hockey team in Calgary called
the Hitmen.
You guessed it. The Calgary Hitmen.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Their logo rocks too. Bret Hart wears their jersey all the time. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, shout out Bret Hart and Owen Hart, the Hart family. Shout out to Sting. We love what you're doing now with your facial hair. You look great.
Oh my god.
Come on.
And
leave him alone. He's old.
I know, I genuinely like it.
Sting looks sweet.
He looks sweet.
He looks so cool.
He should have done that in the ring. And I hope both wherever they are right now, Sting and Bret, I hope they're both enjoying their lives. I know Bret's into painting now. Yeah, he's rocking. It was Scott Steiner-esque, but yeah, shout out to those guys. McKenna, thank you once again.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You can find our stuff flashback64.com. Check out the Omega Metroid podcast that Andy's got, the Zelda cast, Virtual Theater, our podcast together. Check out Vic's Figs. And Vic, you got anything else to promote? Just Vic's Figs.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Vic's Figs.
And check out the SoundStone Podcast Network. You can find it at SoundStone.network. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
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 The ZeldaCast is getting even bigger. Join us on patreon.com/SPNet for access to the ZeldaCast XL, the new bonus show featuring podcasting's dynamic duo, Andy Spiteri and Gooey Fame.
We're taking a new approach to do our bonus shows and giving you more of what you love, letting you get more involved in the show itself. Each month, we'll have some fun and play a few games, answer some Patreon questions, and discuss some Zelda topics on a more personal level.
Consider joining for only $4 a month, and you can ask us questions about Zelda or anything else on your mind. Let us know what topics and segments you want us to discuss, and be a part of an amazing community of Zelda fans hosted by two best friends.
The ZeldaCast XL is taking everything you love about the show and ramping it up even more. So come and hang out with us, only on patreon.com/spnet.